1987's Predator is easily one of the best 80s action films of all time. Arnold Schwarzenegger, Carl Weathers, Bill Duke, Jesse Ventura, and Jean Claude Van Damme? Rumors have said that not only was Van Damme cast as the Predator, he actually shot for a few weeks in the jungles of Mexico, nearly dying inside of a terrible Predator costume before he was fired. Is this true? It turns out yes. This story has been confirmed by some other outlets out there, but I wanted to put them all into one definitive piece to really set the record straight, including words from the man himself, Jean Claude Van Damme. When producer Joel Silver was making Predator, it was casting director Jackie Birch who suggested Van Damme. Jean Claude Van Damme was someone who used to constantly come into my office, jumping up in the air, showing me his moves, begging me for work. He was nobody. He didn't have any credits. So finally I said to Joel Silver, he'd be great as the Predator because no one moves like him. It's true, Van Damme was known around town for his crazy splits, and it was because of them that he scored the role of Predator. He confirmed this in a Hollywood Reporter interview.
I came to the studio, and they made me run around the studio, and I jumped, and I like a dancer, I see me jumping.
Jump around indeed, but not in the iconic Predator costume that we're all used to. No, he was in something else entirely. Visual effects artist Steve Johnson said it was director John McTiernan that first came into a production meeting, dropping a bunch of sketches of the first Predator designs, asking if they could make it come to life. It was awful. It was ahead of its time, let's put it that way. But the head did suck. Look, this was the 80s and not everyone was Stan Winston, so a lot of stuff did suck, and this original design did suck. The character design had the head of an ant, with backward bent reptilian legs and extended arms. Basically an extraterrestrial insect frog. Fun fact, this design later inspired the River Ghost character in Robert Rodriguez's Predators. Now, there were actually two suit designs that they made. The actual final one that they got late into production, and then another one that they made out of red felt. They used red felt because they couldn't use green screen out into the jungle. And this is the suit they use when the Predator has his invisibility cloaking device on. That was the suit that Van Damme had to wear on set. And look, it was a surprise to him, as he told Starlog magazine back in 1989. They said I would be in a tight leotard with half-human, half-animal makeup on my face. But instead, Van Damme got this. My head was in the neck, my hands were in the forearms, and there were cables attached to my fingers to move the creature's head and jaws. My feet were in its calves. So I was on stilts. It was a disgusting outfit. Steve Johnson confirms that when Van Damme showed up, he had no idea what he was in for.
They wanted to just tell the guy to hop around like a frog, and it was Jean Claude Van Damme who had no idea what he was getting into. He thought he was going to show his martial arts abilities.
To make matters worse, they wanted Van Damme to run like the Predator, to be stealthily running around the muddy, actual Mexican jungle, while wearing this rubber suit in 100-degree weather.
Because he thought he could do his martial arts, he could fight Arnold Schwarzenegger. Impossible! Well, he didn't realize that he was just kind of a stuntman, right?
The original visual effects team and Van Damme himself constantly told producer Joel Silver that it would be physically impossible.
Put me on sticks and woods, and they start to melt all the cast on me. Them, I was just to them a stunt guy, right? And it's boiling hot. I am a guy, I like to breathe. And now they're gonna do my head and everything, and I've got my friend next to me. I said, man, I ain't gonna make it.
So while they did in fact hire Van Damme to play the Predator, they put him in a costume where he couldn't move around like he does. That clearly created some conflicts.
We get him out there for the first shot, and he's just seething. We got him in a lawn chair, and you can see his eyes through the rubber muscles of the neck, and he's like, I hate this head.
But the question that's still up for debate is how Van Damme left the project. There are multiple accounts from crew and cast members that explain how it happened, and they all are different. First up is Craig Baxley, a second unit director and stunt coordinator. He was there to play the creature, and a company called Boss had designed a creature, and they spent an absolute fortune on it. And so they brought Jean Claude out, and they put the head on Jean Claude, and Jean Claude stood up and freaked out, and took off this $20,000 head and threw it on the ground, and it shattered. And Joel said, "What the F are you doing?" He told Jean Claude, "You'll never work in Hollywood again. Get off my set." So that was it. Producer John Davis says something more simply. He was the original Predator until we realized the Predator couldn't be 5'6". He actually needed to be of greater stature. Richard Chaves, who played Poncho, had this to say. I remember getting a phone call in my room from Joel because Jean Claude, him and I hit it off right away, and I thought that he would have been incredible as the Predator, but he wanted his face to be seen. And I remember Joel saying, you go down there and talk to him and convince him that he's the alien and he's got to get into the suit. And so I went down and spent a couple hours trying to convince him that, he'd be in this costume. But everybody's going to know it's you, Jean Claude, because nobody can move like you. I tried my best to convince him, but it didn't work. And then I guess something happened. and he capitulated, Jean Claude, to get into this suit and give it a try. And when they sent some of the first dailies of Jean Claude in the original suit, the people at Fox hated it. Absolutely hated it. And they thought it looked like a rat. And it did. As soon as Joel was told about that news, he let him go. Here's what actor Bill Duke, who played Mac, had to say. They were going to, I think, superimpose all these special effects on the body in post-production. But in order to do that, the actor had to wear a felt suit that covered his whole body. And with 90 and 100 degree temperatures, Jean Claude had passed out twice from dehydration. And Joel came over and said, Jean, I know it's hot, but we're losing time, man. If you pass out one more time, we gotta fire you. So John says, I'm not doing it on purpose. Joel says, man, this is production. Don't take it personally. So 2 weeks went by, and he's flying on these wires and trees and everything, and he passes out. And Joel comes and tells him, you're fired. But there's another account from Joel Hynek, a visual effects supervisor. I was in Joel Silver's trailer, and he had called for Jean Claude to come see him. And he comes in the trailer, and Joel starts saying, you gotta stop kickboxing, because Jean Claude wanted to kickbox. And he was telling him, look, the Predator's not a kickboxer. And Van Damme was like, I must do that. That's how I see the Predator. And Joel said, well, you're fired. Get out of here. And Van Damme says, kiss my balls, and walks out. And that was the end of it. So as you can see, there's multiple accounts. But what did the man himself, Mr. Jean Claude Van Damme, have to say about it? Well, he didn't get into much specifics, but he does admit that he was let go.
I knew it's going to be a problem, and Joel Silver and I did have a discussion, and Carl Weathers said to me, the guy from Rocky, he said, don't argue with Joel Silver, because then you'll be burned in town. I'm like, what do you mean? He said, just don't say nothing, wait until he's firing you. Wait until he fire your ass. So then he said, you can't go home because he replaced me. They put a stunt guy.
Now, the movie had been shooting for weeks before they even got the crappy costumes. So Jean Claude Van Damme came into the movie already in progress. When they eventually got dailies of the suit in action and sent it to the studio freaked out. They did not like what they saw. And apparently Joel Silver, who was far more hands-on in this production than I realized in my research, he was there every day, on and off, really involved in this picture. And he actually got the stunt team to put together a big action sequence featuring the cast in about 8 days. He put that together, sent it to the studio, and that actually saved the film. They were able to keep going. The film was almost shut down due to how bad this suit was.
Oh, are we in trouble?
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe if you shoot it from a low angle up, it would look bigger, you know? It just was kind of like underwhelming.
So when the studio actually saw the new action sequence, they thought, well, hey, we might actually have a hit in our hands. It was actually Arnold Schwarzenegger who then suggested Stan Winston, after working with him on Terminator, to have him do the redesign for the Predator. And thank God he did.
I was sketching concepts for the Predator. Jim Cameron looked over to me and says, you know, I always wanted to see something with mandibles. And I went, oh, really? Well, so what?
I think Stan Winston gave the Predator a great look. He came up with that unique hair design, came up with those jowls. He really created an indelible monster.
In fact, later that year, Stan Winston went on to win his first visual effects Oscar for Aliens. And ironically, even though he was fired, it was Predator that gave us global sensation Jean Claude Van Damme. When I met Menahem Golan from Canon, he heard about me playing the Predator, and he was very excited to sign me for Bloodsport. That helped me a lot. He didn't know I was an alien. He ain't gonna see my face and my body. He thought I was the type of alien with a human face and body where people would be able to recognize me. And it was Bloodsport that catapulted Van Damme into box office success. So it's true, Van Damme was the Predator for several weeks in the shoot, and he was let go from the production. But it turns out he didn't need the Predator. The Muscles from Brussels became a global box office sensation on his own, splits and all. And that's time. Thanks so much for watching Movie Theories here on Movie World. If you have a theory you want us to dive into, please suggest it down in the comments below. And be sure to subscribe to not miss any other future theories or content in the future. We have so much more you can watch. Stay tuned for more. I'm Andy Signore. Thanks so much for watching. Guys, Movie World is not yet monetized, so if you'd like to support more quality content and keep it going, you can donate via the links in the description below.